Welcome back. In this session, we are continuing our exploitation with another interesting tool, Metasploit. In the previous session, we used the Medusa to gain access to the remote service on the target machine. And in this session, we'll try to discuss the Metasploit. So that is the hacking the target system. So the Metasploit is the contentional hacker tool. So it is powerful, flexible, free, and loaded with awesomeness. So we focus on the Metasploit framework in this session, how it works, what are the different steps are required to use this Metasploit. So we focus on the exploit frameworks on the Metasploit. So an exploit framework is a formal structure for developing and launching the exploits on the target machine. And no, these frameworks assist the development process by providing organization or guidelines for how the various pieces are assembled and interact with each other in this exploit framework. So Metasploit actually started out as a network game, but its full potential was realized when it was transformed into a full fledged exploit tool. So then Metasploit actually contains a suite of tools that includes dozens of different functions for various purposes, but it is probably best known for its powerful and flexible exploitation framework. So before the release of Metasploit, security researchers had two main choices. One, they could develop custom code by piecing together various exploits and payloads to run on the target machine, and they could invest in one of the two commercial available exploit frameworks like Core Impact and Immunity Sex Canvas. So both this Impact and Canvas were great choice and highly successful in their own way. So then the Metasploit was different from everything else because hackers and pen testers had access to a truly open source exploit framework. So this means that everyone could access, collaborate, develop, and share the exploits with each other. So it also means that the exploits could be developed in an almost factory like assembly line approach. So the assembly line approach allowed hackers and penetration testers to build exploit based on their own needs. So that is the Metasploit allows you to select target first and then choose from a wide variety of payloads which are going to run on the target machine. So the payloads are interchangeable and not tied to a specific exploit. So payload is the additional functionality or change in behavior that you want to accomplish on the target machine. So most popular payloads include, the one is adding new users, and the opening the back doors on target machine, installing the new software onto a target machine. So these are the the popular payloads in the Metasploit framework or exploit framework. So it is important to understand the distinction between Metasploit and a vulnerability scanner. So when we use a vulnerability scanner like Nmap scanner or the Nessus scanner, so these scanners will only check to see if a system is vulnerable or not, means what are the open ports, what are the closed ports, what are the filtered ports, which services are running on the target machine, which operating system is running on target machine, is there any operating system patches are missing, is there any the remote access services are running on the target machine. So it will give those information, but this occurs in a very passive way with a little chance of any unintentional damage or disruption on the target machine side. But Metasploit and other frameworks are exploitation tools. So these tools do not perform tests. These tools are used to complete the actual exploitation of the target, to do any kind of modifications or installations, adding users, deleting users, changing the password files on target machines. So anything can be happen. So vulnerability scanners looks for and report the potential weaknesses, whereas your Metasploit attempts to the actually exploit the system it scans. So Metasploit can be, it is open source. It can be downloaded from the Metasploit.com. So if you are running the Kali, so Metasploit is already installed in the Kali Linux. So there are several different ways to interact with this Metasploit, like the menu driven interact way. But we are going to focus using this menu driven non graphical user interface and the text based system called the MSF console, right? So the MSF console is fast, friendly, intuitive and easy to use. So the easiest way to access this MSF console in the by just opening the terminal window on Kali Linux and just issuing the command that MSF console. So by issuing this command, it will run this MSF console. So this MSF console can be accessed through the application menu on the desktop of Kali Linux also. By just giving this command in the terminal, you can run it. So this MSF console can be also be accessed through the application menu in Kali Linux. By starting this the MSF console, it takes around 10 to 30 seconds to load this the exploit framework or MSF console uh, in the terminal. So once it starts, then you will find the Metasploit will start by presenting you a banner with the command prompt line MSF, the greater than symbol. This command prompt will be run over there. So when Metasploit first loads, it shows you the number of exploits, payloads, encoders, and the nodes. So what are these exploits? So we call these as modules of your Metasploit. These are the modules of your Metasploit. So in the exploits module, you will see some number of exploits that you will find over there. So these exploit modules are used to leverage vulnerabilities in a manner that allows the framework to execute arbitrary code. So the arbitrary code that is executed is referred to as the payload. So in the payload module, in the context of Metasploit exploit module, payload module encapsulate the arbitrary code, that cell code, that is executed as the result of an exploit succeeding. So this normally involves the creation of a Metasploit session, but may instead execute code such as adding user accounts or executing a simple pingback command that verifies that code execution was successful against a vulnerable target. So payload module uh, can also be used individually to generate standalone executable or shell code for use within the exploit. Whereas your encoders module, the encoders take the raw bytes of a payload and run some sort of encoding algorithms like bitwise XOR algorithm. So these modules are useful for encoding bad characters such as null bytes. Whereas you find nopes. So this nopes module that sort for the sort for your no operation, so that generates a sequence of no operation instructions that perform no side effects. So these nopes are often used in conjunction with the stake buffer overflow. Along with this, you'll find another module called the auxiliary module. So in the auxiliary module, the auxiliary module do not exploit a target, but can perform useful tasks such as the administration, like modify, operate, or manipulate something on the target machine. And another task is analyzing. So in analyzing task, it uses the tools that perform the analysis, are mostly the password cracking. And another auxiliary module is to perform the task gathering. So in gathering, this module gather, collect, and the enumerate data from a single target. Whereas another task is auxiliary module performs the another task is denial of service, that crash or slow a target machine or service. And scanning tasks can be performed by auxiliary module, and server support can be performed by auxiliary module. So these are, so these modules are basically loads and available as soon as your the Metasploit is running. So it can also show you how many days have passed since your last update on these modules. So you can see this on the screen here. When by giving the command msf console, it takes some time to load this. So there it finds you can find the modules here, exploit module, and how many exploits are there means at this time, while when this screenshot is taken, by the time 996 exploits are there in that module. Whereas another one is auxiliary module, as stated, that it is this auxiliary module is not going to do any exploitation, but it is going to perform certain tasks like administration, scanning, doing the vulnerability, sorry, denial of service, gathering information, analyzing the performance, like password cracking and server support type. And then you find the posts module. Another one is payload modules, encoders, and nopes modules. So this is easily accomplished by entering the following command to update all these modules, like msf update. If you give the msf update, so that will be, update all these modules. If any new what you call new payloads or new encoders or new nopes or new exploits are there, that will be updated. So, in order to use the Metasploit, what are the basic steps required in this framework? First, you must identify the target. So, you must have a list of target IP addresses. So then exploit must be selected. Which exploit? So first you need to set the target, the remote host you need to set up in this Metasploit. The target must be identified. Then you must identify the exploit. So in this example, you are having 996 exploits are there. Out of that, which exploit is required, that you need to identify. Exploit must be selected. Once exploit selected, for that exploitation to execute the codes on the target machine or remote host is required a payload. So that payload needs to be picked up. First, target machine IP address you need to set up. Then select the exploit module. From this exploit module, select the exploit, and then for that exploit to execute code or interchange the piece of information on the target machine to source machine, you need to select the payload. And once you set up these, then you can issue the exploit. So the exploit itself must be launched on the target machine by just issuing the run command or exploit command. So an exploit is a pre-packaged snippet of code that gets sent to a remote system. So this code causes some a typical behavior on the target system that allows us to execute a payload. So once payload is, here payload is also a small block of code that is used to perform some task like installing new software or creating new user or opening the backdoors on the target system, or you can upload the file, you can download the file on the target systems. So the steps which are required to successfully complete this exploit framework, one is vulnerabilities. So you need to identify the vulnerabilities. So vulnerabilities are the weaknesses that allow the attackers to exploit the systems and execute the remote code on the target. That remote code, we call it as your payload. So to run this remote code or payloads and target, you requires the remote access service. So remote access service, like your FTP service, SSH service, Telnet service, or you may find some patches, operating system missing patches on the target machine, or you can find. So you get you require the vulnerabilities on the target system, and then the payloads are the additional software or functionalities that run on the target system once the exploit has been successfully executed on the target system. So by starting the MSF console into the to interact with the Metasploit, the Metasploit is like the scalpel, not a hat check. So rather than blindly spraying the exploits at a target, pen testers or penetration testers need to find a way to match up known system vulnerabilities with the prepackaged exploits in the Metasploit. So, to correlate a target's vulnerability with Metasploit's exploits module, penetration testers needs to review our findings in the scanning phase, like what are the missing patches on the target machine, what are the open ports, what are the which server is running on the target, which operating system is running on the target, that is whether it is Windows, or whether it is, if it is Windows operating system, which version is running on this. So it needs to, pen testers needs to review those findings. So this, in the scanning phase, we use the tools of Nessus report or the Nmap script vulnerability output for finding these vulnerabilities. So Nessus is a vulnerability scanner, as we discussed, and provide us with a list of known weaknesses or missing patches on the operating systems. So in the Nessus output, you should pay a special attention to the vulnerabilities labeled as the rankings, called whether high vulnerability ranking or the critical vulnerability ranking or mixed vulnerability ranking or low vulnerability ranking. So many high or critical Nessus vulnerabilities, especially missing Microsoft patches, and correlate directly with the Metasploit exploits in the exploit modules. So let us just assume that for this demonstration, in the we will give a separate video on for demonstrating this Metasploit. But to understand the basic concept, you just assume that during the penetration testing, we identified the target machine like 192.168.18.131 is our target machine IP address. Then we use the Nessus tool for finding the vulnerabilities on this target machine. So then, when running this scanning process by setting certain scan policies on the Nessus server, it identifies some of the vulnerabilities on this target machine, and it gives the ranking that this is a vulnerable service which is having the critical vulnerability ranking. So by running nmap that tells your new target IP, it gives this. These are the some of the vulnerabilities are missing patches on the operating system. If you run these using the nmap, suppose by running the nmap, the script vulnerability command, which gives you the these whatever the missing patches are there on the operating system. So by running the nmap tells that our target is a Windows operating system machine with the service pack 2 or 3 installed, and the firewall is disabled there. So then by issuing the command, the NSE script vulnerability and target IP address 192.168.18.131, it will give you the complete details about the target machine. So by notice here there are two critical findings which are finding here, this one and this one, that MS08067, another one is MS09001. So if you're following along with this example using the XP with no service pack on the virtual machine, Nessus probably identify the dozens or more critical vulnerabilities. Okay, we'll see that in the demonstration. Okay, so but in order to expedite our process, we begin by focusing on the critical or high vulnerability first. So the Nessus provides us with the ability to click on each finding and drill down to get the specific details about the identified users. By just clicking on this, you will get the more information, like the Microsoft Windows Server service is the crafting the remote procedure calls, something like that. So reviewing the first critical finding that reveals the source of this issue is a missing patch. This issue is the missing patch, by just clicking on that one. So what you find here, so specifically the Microsoft patch MS08067 has not been installed on the target machine. So the second critical vulnerability discovered by Nessus reveals another missing Microsoft patch. So this vulnerability is the result of missing patch Microsoft patch MS09001. So further details about each findings can be viewed by clicking on the specific findings. So at this point, target has at least two missing patches. So both these patches are labeled as critical, and the description that the Nessus provides for both missing patches mentions remote code execution. So the remote code execution can be done here by clicking this. So now the Metasploit will be able to exploit the target node. We know the target IP address and we know their vulnerabilities. These are missing, and these vulnerabilities says that you can execute the code remotely on the on this target machine. So next, to head over the Metasploit and look for any exploits pertaining to these MS08067 or MS09001. Once we have started the MSF console, then we use the search command uh, we use this the search keyword command to locate these missing patches. So search these missing patches in the Metasploit modules. The Metasploit modules are exploit modules. So then this command to locate any exploits which are related to our Nessus findings or Nmap findings. So to accomplish this, by just giving this search command in the MSF command prompt, give the keyword search with the missing patches. So Metasploit will search through its information and return any relevant information it finds. So then, by doing this, you will search by giving the command on Kali Linux by issuing the command that the search MS08067, it gives in the exploit module, it finds is there any exploits are matching or not. So here it gives one exploit is matching, that exploit Windows SMB MS06, the net API is there. So what it says, so its ranking is great, it is. So the Microsoft Server service, the relative path stack corruption is there. So what it says, and by searching another patching, the missing patch MS09001, it gives the auxiliary port module is identified here. So in the auxiliary port, it is not going to exploit anything, but it can do the modifications. Means it can update, it can do the administrative works or analyzing the target machine or scan the target machine, or denial of service attack can be identified using the auxiliary. So there are two modules that are identified. So this is in the exploit module, and MS09 is in the auxiliary module that is identified. So by reviewing this output, we started Metasploit and issued the search command, followed by the specific missing patch that Nessus discovered. In our case, it may be you may find any different missing patches, but the procedure is same. So after searching, Metasploit found the matching exploit and provide us with the several piece of information about the exploit and auxiliary. So first it provides us with the matching exploit name and location. So the exploit in the location that it is having in Windows under SMB, the missing patch is this one, MS08067 NPA. So next, the Metasploit provide us with the rank and brief description, as said, the grade. So it can be used for exploitation purpose, and its description Microsoft Server service relative path. So it is important to pay a close attention to the exploit rank. So this information provides details about how dependable the exploit is, or how often the exploit is successful, as well as how likely the exploit is to cause instability or crashes on the target system. So the higher an exploit is ranked, the more likely it is to succeed, and less likely it is to cause disruption on the target system. So Metasploit uses 7 rating to rank exploit. So what are those? The 7 that you can find: manual, low, average, normal, good, great, and excellent. These are ranks. Okay, so you can find more information and a formal definition of ranking methodology on the metasploit.com website. But here, just remember, as the ranks goes up, it gives a good, the result. So finally, Metasploit search feature present us with the brief description of the exploit, providing us with the additional details about the attack. So then choose the exploits with a higher rank, as they are less likely to disrupt the normal functioning of the target. So now that you understand how to match up vulnerabilities in Nessus with exploits. So in Metasploit, and you have the ability to choose between two or more Metasploit exploits. So then once you identify, so in order to run the Metasploit, we need to provide the exploit framework with a series of commands to launch the payload on the target machine. Because Metasploit is already running, so as we already found our exploit, one is auxiliary module patch is there, another one is another patch is in the exploit module. So we continue by issuing the command, the keyword command in the MSF prompt, that use command. Use the identified, use the identified module or matching module name. So what is the matching module name which we identified? Is exploit Windows SMB MS08067 net API is missing package. So by issuing this command, by using this exploit uh, module, the exploit in that exploit module, you can by this command tells the Metasploit to use the exploit that your vulnerability scanner identified. So at this point, your MSF, the Metasploit framework prompt, will change to match the prompt of the chosen exploit this. So then your command line will get here. So once we have the exploit loaded, we need to view the available payloads. First, we need to identify the exploit, then we need to identify the payload. So to identify the payload in this option, in this exploit module, by issuing the command option or show of payloads, it shows all the payloads that can be executed along with this exploit. So for that, by just issuing show payloads, so by issuing these payloads, it will give you, the all the related set of payloads. So then from there, you need to select the appropriate payload, which is suits to execute your vulnerability. So to select one of the payloads, we just type the set payload command. After that, set the payload command. So in the payload command, so interestingly, suppose if you wants to connect to the target machine using the remote access service VNC, suppose the VNC, okay, because it says the remote code execution is the vulnerability in this case. So then you can select a payload which can connect your machine to the target machine. So that you can set that particular payload by issuing the command set a payload. The payload is Windows, the VNC inject, and reverse TCP. So there are many payloads to choose from, but for this example, we will install virtual network computing on the target machine and then have that machine connect back to us. So VNC is a remote control program, PC software that allows a user to connect to a remote machine. So view the remote machine and control the mouse and keyboard as if you are physically sitting at that machine. So it works much the same as a remote desktop or a terminal. So if successfully executed this payload, if successfully executed this exploit and payload, the exploit will call the install VNC payload and remotely install the software on victim machine or target machine without any user interaction. So different payloads will require different additional options to be set. So to set that, it requires, if you fail to set the required options for a given payload, like setting the remote host IP address, remote port numbers that you need to set up. So there are few things that worse than getting this far and failing to set an option. So to view the available options issues to that particular payload, you can give the show options in the MSF command terminal. That will give you all the what are the missing I mean the what are the missing options are there, that will show to you that whether the remote host IP address is set up or not, remote port numbers are set up or not, local host IP address is set up or not, local port number is set up or not, so which service is required authentication, whether it requires yes or no. So that has to be set up. So when using this, the Windows VNC inject reverse TCP payload, we see that there are two options that need to be set because they are missing any default information like remote host configuration, remote host uh, IP addresses. So the first is remote host and the second is local host. So needs to provide the remote host IP address, that is the target machine IP address, which we identified during the reconnaissance phase and which used for scanning the target machine for finding the vulnerabilities. And then we give the local host IP address, that is the pen testers or hackers host IP addresses. So to set this, we use the option set remote host and giving the remote host IP address, and set the local host by giving the local host IP address. So in our case, the remote host is 192.168.18.131, where the Windows operating system is running on this particular machine and having the missing patches at MS08, and another one is MS09, 001. Two patches are missing. So now that you have required options set, so it is usually a good idea at this point to reissue the show options command to ensure that you are not missing any information before running the exploit on target machine, or execute the remote code on the target machine. So by just issuing the show option again. So once you are sure that you have entered all the information correctly and you are ready to launch your exploit, then to send your exploit to the target machine, simply by giving the keyword exploit in the MSF console prompt. So by giving this, it start running on the target machine. So the what are the minimum command sets that required to launch a exploit and target machine, that you can see in this screen. First, in the scanning phase, whatever the missing exploit patch that you identified, the exploit patch, then you use the search command ms08 in the MSF framework. If it is finds this missing patches, that the matching module in the exploit matching module to this patch is identified. So from there you will get a lot of information that what is that particular module name, its rank. Then we use this particular exploit module by using the command use this exploit in the MSF console. Then you will get into this module exploit Windows SMB MSF08 module. So in this, you need to set a payload. So we are interested to connect to the desktop, remote desktop. So for that, it used the virtual network computing injection reverse TCP payload will be there. So here you can issue the show option or show payload. So it will give all the list of payloads inside this module. So you can identify this and set this payload in this exploit. When this payload is set up, then you need to check whether the source IP addresses and destination IP addresses are configured or not. So by giving that, set the remote host with the remote host IP address and set the local host with the local host IP address. Once this information is successfully configured, then you are good to go by executing the command exploit on this. So after sending the exploit command, to understand what is going on here, so you need to build your understanding of buffer overflows and exploitations. So Metasploit gives you the ability to stand on the shoulders of the gains and the power to launch incredible complex attacks with just a few commands. So after typing exploit, Metasploit will go off and do its thing by sending exploits and payloads to the target. So this is where the hacking like hug Jackman part comes in. So if you set up everything correctly, after a few seconds, you will be presented with a screen belonging to your victim machine or target machine. So because our payload in this example was a virtual network compute install, so you will have the ability to view and interact with the target machine as if you are physically sitting in front of it. So by successfully running it, you will get this screen on your target on your machine. So on your machine, by running this exploit, you will get this virtual network computing, the VNC installed over there, and you will get the target machine's screen on your screen. So let me just summarize the steps required to run this Metasploit against a target machine. One is Metasploit by opening a terminal and issuing the command MSF console command. Then you need to search the missing patch which comes from your the common vulnerabilities exposure. Then we use the command. You need to once you identify the missing patches, use that missing patches. So for that, use that use command and use that missing patch which identified in the vulnerability scan in this search one. Then once you use this, in that you need to set a payload. So for that, you need to identify which payload you want to execute on the target one. So by issuing the show payloads, you find all the payloads which can run on this module. So then you can select the appropriate payload to run on the target machine as shown in the figure, that is the VNC injection payload that you can set. This payload, first you use this exploit module, then set this payload for this exploit module. Then you need to set the IP addresses of your target. So to check is there any missing information, we issue the show options here that will display any missing information, the what you call the source IP address and the destination IP addresses. Then if anything is missing, then you can set use this set option name to desired option input, like setting the what you call uh, the remote host and local host. Then issue the exploit command to launch the exploit against the target machine. So I would like to stop this session here. In the next session, we'll try to use this Metasploit. It is important to review few more of the basic payloads.